Welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I'm going to be reviewing the Koh-I-Noor Brilliant Dye-Based Watercolors. You'll figure out if it's the right type of watercolor for you, if it's worth buying, is it worth the price, how does it compare to other more well-known brands. And I'll be doing a swatch of the colors and how I did these two sample paintings here. So just a little bit about me. I've been doing watercolor for about 7 years and started collecting many different types of artist grade and student grade watercolor paints in the process. What's interesting about the Koh-I-Noor Brilliant Watercolor set is that it's dye-based. So I guess the main difference between dye and pigment is that the pigment usually sits on top of the paper. It gets absorbed, but not thoroughly. Dyes tend to penetrate deeper layers, staining the color underneath. Dyes typically aren't as good as pigments in that it tends to fade over time when exposed to light faster than most pigments. And so I wouldn't say these are light fast or as light fast as your watercolor brands. What this means is if you create an artwork with this particular brand, it won't be archival quality, so I wouldn't recommend it if you're planning to sell the original. However, it's good enough if you're going to scan and print it, which is what most artists do nowadays. I tried to look at the Koh-I-Noor website specifically to do more research on this particular brand, but I found no light fast information nor the names for the colors. I would appreciate help on that. So what I did is I compared the colors with all my other artist brands and then just took some of their names. But enough about that, let's get started. First, I'm going to swatch them out. As you can see, it's very brilliant. My swatches for my other watercolor paints were all over the place, so I decided to print out a swatch sheet on my regular Canon XL Mix Media 5.5 by 8.5 inch notebook. There was a sale, so I got a couple. I have two types. One is just for a color comparison chart, while another is a more detailed sheet with pigment information, light fastness, a pigness test, and a lift test. Before I share my thoughts with this product, I'm gonna paint with it, which is the fun part really. The first painting is going to be Uraraka Ochako from Boku no Hero Academia. The first thing I did is I created a sketch using Illustrator, and then I printed it out on a parchment paper. Then after that, I shaded the back part with pencil so I can transfer it over the paper and then sketch it over again, which is kind of a very long process. But what I feel like is when you do a sketch digitally, it's usually a lot cleaner than doing it on paper because it's easier to move things around instead of having to erase it. The paper I'm using is Arches Cold Press 300 GSM. As opposed to the Canson XL, which I use to swatch the watercolors. I decided to start using the more expensive paper because it's been sitting inside my closet for a while. And I know that Arches is kind of like the standard in terms of doing watercolor. It allows you to layer on many different layers of the colors, and it's not something that you can replicate in some of the cheaper watercolor papers available. So if you do have the budget, I definitely recommend to try this paper out. And this next one, I'm gonna do a very random piece, so I'm not that proud of it, but I just want to show you how brilliant the colors really are. This is what you do when you don't plan your compositions. But I actually like it. Got inspiration from Ghibli. You know how they have like frog-like faces? I'm surprised I actually enjoyed painting with this. Usually this set would be inside my closet for a while because like I typically reach out for Schminke or my Sakura Koi paints. it's actually nice. And it layers down pretty well, although it just dries up really fast. So let's talk about pricing and availability. Koh-I-Noor hardwood is based in the Czech Republic, so if you're from around here, I'd assume this is readily available. They do sell more of the common circular disc types, and you could see them being sold in most art stores, but not this particular brand. And I guess it's not that expensive. You can buy this particular brand for about $15 to $20 on eBay and even on Amazon. Do you need to buy this paint? No, you don't. It doesn't behave like your typical watercolor paints. It sort of even reminds me of ink. However, when you mix it with the gray colors, it starts to behave more like watercolor. The gray colors are a bit opaque, as you've seen from the swatch test. But if you're thinking of buying this, I think it's a good addition to whatever collection you have. And since it's cheap enough to start with, I think it would be a good idea to send as a gift or use for, I don't know, your day-to-day illustrations and paintings, stuff like that. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe, especially if you want to see more of this kind of product review videos. I have a lot of watercolor paints that I really want to try out and do paintings with. I also have to finish my swatch project, which is sort of like swatching every watercolor brand that I have on hand. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye!